the geometry teachers when I say that we really appreciate how diligent and responsible you've been with taking these notes. Like we said in class, these notes really put you at an advantage when you have background knowledge, and they really allow us to maximize our time in class. So what you want to do is you want to turn to your next clean page in your notebook, and you want to label the top Unit 1, Section 3.1 Transversals. In the top right corner, you want to write a 4, and that indicates that this is your fourth set of notes. In a couple slides, I'm going to show you a table, and you're going to want to copy that table down because that's how we're going to be recording the vocabulary terms we go over today. So underneath your label, you want to write the objective for tonight, and your objective for tonight is to label and classify the angles formed by a transversal. Okay, and here's that table that I was talking about. You want to put terms on the left and definition on the right. You want to skip maybe 2 to 3 lines for each vocabulary term. So I didn't really show that spacing in my table, but you want to definitely leave 2 to 3 lines for each word, depending on how large you write. Okay, so jumping right in, our first term is parallel lines. And parallel lines are basically coplanar lines that do not intersect, even as they go on forever. So this should be a review of a term you learned probably in middle school math, and then you probably touched on it in Algebra 1 when you learned that parallel lines have the same slope. What may be new is that we use a symbol to indicate parallel lines, and if you look down here where my cursor is, you'll notice that there are yellow arrows, and those yellow arrows indicate that these two white lines are parallel. So you don't need to write this down, but just kind of think about the word trans and what other words you've heard this root in. And basically trans means across, through, or crossover. So we're going to use our knowledge of this root word to look at the definition for transversal. And a transversal is basically just a line that crosses over or intersects two, and I'm actually going to add that it's 2 or more coplanar lines at distinct points. Okay, so it crosses over 2 or more coplanar lines at distinct points. And you don't need to write any of these real-life examples, but it might help just to think about them. So if you look at the line sheet of paper you're taking notes on, those red and blue lines indicate, the red line could be the transversal, and it's crossing over 2 or more of those blue lines. And also in the top right-hand corner of the slide, you'll notice that this yellow line is crossing over 2 white lines. We would say that this yellow line is our transversal. You don't need to write this down or draw this picture, but we just wanted to illustrate 2 parallel lines being cut by a transversal. And what you see in this picture is the Ben Franklin Bridge, which is the bridge that connects Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And the 2 red lines are parallel, and they're being intersected by that green transversal. And you'll notice that these intersections form 8 angles, and we're actually going to be getting into the different relationships that these angles have to each other in the next couple slides. Oh, and jumping ahead, so I already said that there are 8 angles formed. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we're going to be getting into how all these angles are related to each other. So your next term is exterior angles. And exterior angles are angles that are formed by the transversal's intersection with parallel lines and lie on the outside or open side of the parallel lines. So you can write the key points. You don't necessarily have to, but I will say that we are going to go over a diagram in the next slide, and it probably would be helpful for you to write the diagram on the next slide. Okay, so here's our little diagram that we worked with earlier, and basically what we want you to get out of this is that your exterior angles are formed on the outside of lines R and S. Okay, so what we mean by outside is that we consider where my cursor is to be the inside, and so our exterior angles are going to be outside. So angles 1, 2, 7, and 8 are going to be your exterior angles. Your next term is interior angles, and basically your interior angles are the angles that are formed by the transversal's intersection with parallel lines and are inside, in between, or sandwiched between the 2 parallel lines. your key point is that these angles are always on the inside and always with respect to the parallel lines. And these slides say parallel lines, but it's important to know that the two lines don't necessarily have to be parallel to use these vocabulary terms. So here's that diagram again, and just wanted to illustrate that in between lines R and lines S, the two lines that are being intersected, we have what we call the interior. So what we call our interior angles are going to be angles 3, 4, 5, and 6. The next vocabulary term is alternate angles, and alternate angles are with respect to the transversal. And basically, if we have alternate angles, it means that we have angles that lie on opposite sides of the transversal. Okay, so I actually want to draw a picture for this one. Just to kind of illustrate this. So if I have my two lines being intersected, I have R and S, and they're intersected by T. And if you look at this transversal, we see that we have a left side and a right side. And in order for two angles to be considered alternate angles, we have to have one on the left and one on the right. So an example of alternate angles could be angle 1 and angle 2. Or they don't necessarily have to lay right next to each other, so angles 1 and angle 3 could also be considered alternate angles. 4 and 3 are considered alternate angles. 5 and 6 can be considered alternate angles, and 7 and 8 can be considered alternate angles. Oops, let's do that one in blue. So basically what you have is you have a pairing. You have your left angles and you have your right angles. So again, in this diagram that you've already drawn in your notes, your alternate angles could be angle 1 and 2, angle 1 and 3, angle 7 and 5, angle 7 and 8, etc., etc. And so conversely, we need to talk about same-side angles. And so we just said that alternate angles are on opposite sides, and so same-side angles are going to be on the same side of the transversal. So using that same diagram, you remember that you have your left side and you have your right side, and basically you can pair up, angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4 as same side angles. And again, you can pair up your right side angles 5, 6, 7, and 8 as another set of same side angles. So again here, and this is just illustrating another drawing of this, it's angles 1, 4, 5, and 8 are considered same side angles, and 2, 3, 6, and 7 are considered same side angles. Okay, so in summary, angles can either be exterior or interior. So they can either be on the outside or they can be on the inside. And they can either be alternate or on the same side, okay? And so we just talked about that, but these angles can also be a combination of exterior, interior, and alternate and same side. But before we get into those pairings, we want to talk about corresponding angles. And basically, corresponding angles lie on the same side of the transversal and are in corresponding positions relative to the two parallel lines or the two lines that are being intersected. So you'll notice right here, these two red angles are going to be your corresponding angles. They're both located on the right side of the transversal, and they're both located within or underneath the line that's being intersected, okay? And then here you have a similar, the similar angles, just these two green angles are corresponding. They're both on the left side, so they're on the same side, and they're in the same position relative to the two lines that are being intersected. Okay, so now we have some pairings. So basically, alternate interior are a pair of angles that lie on opposite sides of the transversal and inside the two intersective lines. So in this diagram that you've already drawn, what we know is that angles 4 and angle 6 are going to be our alternate interior. They're on opposite sides of the transversal. You see 4 is on the left, 6 is on the right, and they're located within the inside of these two lines that are being intersected. Just like 4 and 6 are alternate interior, 3 and 5 are going to be alternate interior. Alternate exterior, basically pretty similar. Your angles are going to be on opposite sides of the transversal, and they're going to lie outside the two intersected lines. So remember that right here we have our exterior, and right here we have our exterior. And so 7 would be paired with 1, and 8 would be paired with 2. You see how 2 is on the right side of the transversal, 8 is on the left side of the transversal, and they're both located on opposite sides of, or on the outside of the two lines being intersected. And then lastly, we have same side interior. And these are actually located on the same sides of the transversal, and it should say inside the two intersected lines. And so basically what we have is we have two angles, 4 and 5. They're both located on the left side of the transversal and are both located within lines R and lines S. And then 3 and 6 would also be a same side interior pair. We have 3 on the right side and 6 on the right side, and then 3 and 6 are both located within R and within S. So just to kind of recap, make sure you have all of these terms and all of these definitions in your table. I'll leave it up for a couple seconds just so you can make sure that you have everything correctly written and labeled in your table. And then lastly, we have our SAT/ACT question of the week. A car averages 27 miles per gallon. If gas costs $4.04 per gallon, which of the following is closest to how much the gas would cost for this car to travel 2,727 typical miles? And you've got 4 answer choices listed on the slides right here. You have A, B, C, D, and E. Remember, if you answer this question, bring it into class. We'll give you extra credit on your quiz for the week. All right, thank you for tuning in. Please leave questions in the comments if you have any, or bring them with you to class.